What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Calgary Barbell. Today we're going to talk about a really cool exercise and one that I think is vastly underrated and often improperly performed. Today we're going to talk about the dead bug. Now, there are a couple of reasons you might want to do this and a couple of ways to implement it. So let's talk a little bit about that first. Now, one of the reasons you might want to implement this is you find yourself having excessive anterior pelvic tilt. So that means your back arches like this being your front, this being your back. You arch too much like that, and you have trouble getting into a more neutral position. This can manifest itself as tight hip flexors, pulled hamstrings, and extension-based back pain. So that's one of the reasons you might want to do this. Another one I've found really useful is to use this as a cue to help people achieve better bracing through the trunk in general. So getting that sort of closed scissor idea where you're not open like this, but you're locking that down, being able to brace properly through the trunk in the anterior. So one of the ways you can implement this is as a standalone exercise. Now let's say that you're having some of these issues with pain, pulled hamstrings, tight hip flexors, all that kind of stuff. This can help sort of correct some of that movement patterns and the way that you're sort of bracing yourself. The other way you can implement this is in your warm-ups. So as a more consistent cue and something that you use immediately prior to squatting and deadlifting, this can help you develop some mind-muscle connection immediately previous to doing some of the heavier loaded exercises to try and increase your awareness of your bracing in your trunk for those big exercises. So we're gonna go through a couple of demonstrations on how to perform it and some of the common mistakes. So first and most important thing is going to be how you set yourself up for this exercise. So I'm going to show you a proper setup with a nice flat back against the ground, and then I'm going to show you what we want to watch out for, which is having a little bit of an arch or a hump underneath your low back. So this is our proper setup. As you can see, there's no space under my low back. Now, if we're improperly set up, we're going to have this. Now I can already feel tension in my hip flexors and in my low back just from putting myself in that position. So that's one thing we specifically want to watch out for. That's something we're trying to undo with this exercise. So either before we start or as we return the limbs to neutral, we want to be taking a big breath in through the nose to try and fill out through the anterior, the obliques, and the low back, trying to contract all the core musculature in a 360-degree angle around your body. So from here, good back position. That's our starting position. I've taken a nice big breath in. I feel myself fill out through the obliques, the low back, and the trunk. Now from here is when we start articulating. So as we move our limbs, we want to be breathing continually. So as we extend the limbs out, we're going to go left arm and right leg, back to neutral, right arm, left leg, back to neutral. So we're across the body with the limbs that are extending and then returning to our original position. As we do that, we want to make sure that we're breathing out forcefully through the mouth, and this is going to help us contract some of that anterior core musculature to make sure we're not defaulting back into that crappy position. We're keeping the ribs locked down, we're keeping that little bit of posterior pelvic tilt. So that's going to look like this. Good starting position. Big air. Like so. I don't know if you guys can see how much I'm shaking there, but that movement is very, very challenging when performed properly. A couple of the mistakes I generally see are obviously ones that I've already mentioned, like going into anterior pelvic tilt, defeating the purpose of the exercise. But another one I often see people do is just rushing through it. We want to be really slow and conscious and purposeful with our movements here. So if you're rushing through it, chances are we're not holding adequate bracing through the trunk. That should be the number one focus. So I want to talk just a little bit about progression. So if you lay down and you can't get into this position, you can't get your back flat against the ground, that's obviously going to be the first thing you want to work on. Once you can get into the position, we can start looking at smaller joint movements. So if you saw there, I went into almost complete extension of both the shoulder and the hip joint. You might not be able to get that far right off the hop. So if you can't, stop before you start to lose position in your trunk and your spine. Maintain that position and just go as far as you can, trying each time you do the exercise to progress a little bit further. If you're really good at it,
You can go as far as to reach the end point or end range of motion on either side and do a couple of breaths while holding the position. This can make it even more challenging. I think once you've reached that point, I don't think adding ankle weights or wrist weights or anything like that are going to give you any more added benefit. I think if you can do this adequately with body weight and you know, hold for periods of time, sort of in almost like a reverse plank in the bottom, I think you're probably good at that point. You're probably getting the most out of the exercise.
All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you're finding these sort of exercise spotlights helpful, and let us know if there's something that you do or that you're wondering about that you want us to shed some light on, and maybe we can go through that for you guys. So leave a like, let us know in the comments if there's anything you want to see, and thanks again for tuning in, guys. We'll see you soon.